Okay, it is 9:30. Can I go ahead and start, Madam Clerk?
Yes, I see the recording and the live stream are on.
Excellent. Mr. Body is with us. Good morning, sir. It is now 9:30, so I want to welcome everyone to the meeting, all those at home and the media and all of council. It's a sunny day, not as warm as we might like it to be, but nevertheless, we'll accept the sun, right? Anyways, I call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. We have all members of County Council in attendance with the exception of Councillor McLean, and I will alert you when he arrives.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Item number 3 is our land, excuse me, our land acknowledgement. I want to say that we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe. I'm going to get that word yet, and I practice it too. The Anishinaabe, the 6 nations of the Grand River, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat, Wyandot, Wyandot peoples, on whose traditional territories we gather and whose ancestors signed treaties with our ancestors. We recognize also the Métis and the Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all of its diverse peoples. Item number 4, is there any declaration of interest at all, Council? Flipping through my screens here, I do not see any hands. Good morning, Deputy Warden McQueen, I see you there now. That said, we'll proceed. If an interest does arise during the course of the meeting, I would ask you to declare it at that time. Item number 5, adoption of minutes. 5A is County Council and Committee of the Whole minutes, which are dated May 13th, 2021. It's moved by Councillor Keaveney and seconded by Councillor Clumpus. Is there any discussion with respect to those minutes? And I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you. Item 5B is the Long-Term Care Committee of Management minutes, which are dated May 11th. Those are moved by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor O'Leary. Any discussion with respect to those minutes? I'm seeing none. I will once again call the question. Is there anyone opposed to adoption? And seeing no hands, that too is carried. Item 6A, Mary Lou Spicer on deck. 6A is a bylaw, a report for a bylaw to provide for the cancellation of tax increase for the purpose of relieving financial hardship. It is moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Carlton. Mary Lou, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just by way of explanation, a bit of background on this, Bylaw 5112-21, which provides for the cancellation of tax increases for the purpose of relieving financial hardship for low-income seniors and persons with disabilities, was brought forward to Council on May 13th as a follow-up to the May 25th Committee of the Whole Report, FRCW 0921. The bylaw was deferred in order for staff to review the wording in Section 13, which discusses how the tax is canceled or apportioned between the upper and lower tier municipalities and the school boards. And the wording in Section 13 reads that any taxes canceled under this bylaw shall be shared by all levying bodies in the same proportion as those levying bodies share in the taxes levied against the subject property. And so this section was included in the bylaw to assist in implementing the provisions of Section 319, subsection 6 of the Municipal Act. So it talks about the taxes canceled, representing a cancellation of a portion of all the taxes, and the proportional share of the write-off is shared based on the proportional share of the taxes originally imposed. So it was included to assist people in understanding how the apportionment would take place. Finance, legal services, and the consultant who guided the development of the tax relief program reviewed the wording of the proposed bylaw and any variations, and to see if it would align with wording in Section 353, subsection 3 of the Municipal Act. And the wording, just as a background, in 353, and as it specifically applies to 319, So 353 sets out how amounts are written off should be shared or charged back to the various levying bodies, and applies to tax reductions and not just what is considered under 319, but a number of other circumstances where you might make a correction to, and it might be only be to a single levy. And so it refers to the proportional share of the taxes written off. And Peter Fries from MTE gave us an example. So under 357, if a special area rate was incorrectly applied, only the special area rate would be written off, and the reduction wouldn't be shared with the school board or the upper tier. And there's, I think he mentioned about 9 examples that he could have provided. So in summary, both legal services staff and Mr. Fries from MTE recommend the wording in section 13 of proposed bylaw 5112-21 remain as originally presented, and any change in the wording would not change the apportionment set out in the Municipal Act.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Councillor Swever, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. And thank you for the report, Mary Lou. It sheds some light on why we're wording the bylaw the way it is. I remain perplexed as to why the staff would recommend that county funds be used to give relief for an increase that may have been brought by a single lower tier. And now I'm wearing my county hat on this. So this year we had several municipalities consider tax increases of up to 10%. They subsequently whittled them down to more reasonable amounts in the 1% to 2% range. But you know, we know that the lower tiers are under pressure and that future tax increases might be coming that might be quite substantial. And the way the thing is worded right now, the county funds would be used to cover off because we're giving relief from increases. The only increase that might happen might be at the lower tier level, but yet county budgets would have to absorb part of any relief that is given against those increases. And in reviewing the report, I note that the wording, and they keep referring back to 319.6, and under legal and legislated requirements, in the report it said section 319.6 requires that where tax relief is granted in respect of a given property, the taxes to be paid in respect of that property by the lower tier to its upper tier municipality and applicable school boards shall be reduced in the same proportion as they make up the total taxes imposed on that property. So reading that, you would think that that is the wording in the act, but in fact, when you read the act, it says, if a local municipality levies a tax rate for upper tier or school purposes in respect of which there is a deferral or cancellation of tax increases or other relief in respect of tax increases, the amount of taxes the local municipality shall pay the upper tier municipality or school boards shall be reduced accordingly. So it does say accordingly. So that leaves room for quite a bit of interpretation there. So I did consult with our tax advisors, and the interpretation that it should be the relief granted should be borne by the people that have the increases in proportion to their share of the increase, not the proportion of the total taxes. That interpretation, to their knowledge, and they haven't done an extensive review because obviously we don't want to invest in that right now, but to their knowledge, is that alternative interpretation has never been tested. So, you know, it's quite possible that if a lower tier or the county, in fact, bore a significant cost covering the increases of somebody else, you know, it might be tested in the future. So I just find that, you know, when we're in a report, where we say legal and legislative requirements, and we quote a portion of the act and then put in an interpretation, which, you know, is an interpretation and not the act. It's kind of a little confusing to council. So I just wanted to make those points. I just find it's unfair that, you know, if there is an increase at whatever level, that we're asking some other level of government to cover an increase imposed by another level, where, you know, the act clearly appears to be permissive in that the increase can be charged back in proportion to the increase and not the total taxes, although clearly that's not the interpretation of our tax advisors, and maybe, you know, at some point in the future, there will be clarity on that when there is, you know, a decision by someone. So those are my only comments. I think providing tax relief, particularly to the people that need it, is a very worthy objective. So, you know, I support the concept, but I really have a problem with the fairness of asking another level of government, be it the county or the lower tier, to fund relief from an increase at another level.
Okay, you've packed a lot into that statement, Mary Lou. I don't know if you have a response that you want to make, but one of the things I would be interested in hearing about is one of the premises of your comments, Councillor Soever, was that the increase is only at the lower tier level. I'm not sure that I would agree with that, but in any case, it's not for me to agree or disagree, but that seems to be where you're coming from. You're suggesting that the increase can only come from the lower level.
Mr. Warden, no, it could be either. I mean, that could be at the county level. In the case where we have the upcoming assessment increases, if there is an assessment increase as per se in Southgate or Grey Highlands or Blue Mountains and Meaford, where we've had huge increases in property values that may exceed the average for the county, it would be at the county level. But looking at another scenario, if a lower tier were in financial trouble, and there is at least one lower tier that has a huge negative number on their financial assets right now, you know, and they had to raise taxes substantially, it could be at the lower tier level as well. I mean, it can work both ways. The probability is that in the near future, it would be at the county level. But, you know, any circumstances can happen, particularly with lower tiers. It only takes one financial misstep for there to have to be a huge increase at a lower tier level.
Thank you, sir. Mary Lou, is there anything that you want to add to this?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I guess my comment would be based on the information we've received from MTE. We don't have the ability to change the apportionment unless that's something that the province decides to do. So this isn't within our purview.
Okay. Are there any other comments from council? I do not see any other hands. If that's the case, then we are probably ready to call the question, aren't we? So with that said, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the, Councillor Soever, did you have your hand up again, or were you trying to take down your hand? You're muted, sir.
I would like a recorded vote.
Okay. Then Madam Clerk, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warden. Council, you're voting on receiving report FRCC 1621. Councillor Mackie.
In favor.
Councillor Gamble.
In favor.
Councillor Burley.
In favor.
Councillor Carlton.
In favor.
Councillor McQueen.
In favor.
Councillor Desai.
In favor.
Councillor Patterson.
In favor.
Warden Hicks,
Yay.
Councillor Clumpus,
In favor?
Councillor Keaveney,
In favor?
Councillor Body,
In favor.
Councillor O'Leary,
In favor.
Councillor Woodbury,
In favor?
Councillor Millen,
Yay.
Councillor Soever,
Opposed?
Councillor Potter,
Opposed?
Councillor Robinson,
In favor?
Councillor Hutchinson.
In favor.
Motion is carried 77 to 13.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We're going to move on. Now we're dealing with the, oops. I'm getting a message here that my battery is low. I don't know why, but we're on to item number 7, the bylaw. And this is a bylaw to provide for the cancellation of tax increases for the purpose of relieving financial hardship. It is moved by Councillor Mill and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Is there any need for discussion? I see none, and if that's the case, then I will call the question once again. Is there anyone opposed? And seeing none, I'm going to say that that is carried. Oh, I think I was, okay. Yeah, I think I'm okay. Okay, it's plugged in.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you. All right. I think we finished with item 8. We're on to item number 8 now. Good news and celebrations. Does anyone have any good news and oh, Barb Clumpus, you're first. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, County Council. I just wanted to bring to County's attention that after significant challenges in this regard over the years, I just am very, very pleased to announce that we have reached a settlement with the Public Service Canada for the payment in lieu of taxes with regard to the 4th Canadian training base. This is for our municipality, but also for County Council. This is good news for us and certainly for the county as well. But the even better news is that part of this settlement will be the stability of these PILT going forward. So that's our good news today. Thank you.
Excellent. That is good news indeed. Congratulations. Next, Councillor Potter.
Thank you. And I just wanted to give an update on our speed test challenge with the Rural Access to Broadband Internet Technologies program. Since the launch a couple of weeks ago, we have, including people who did tests a little before that, we're over 3,000 now, including 1,300 new ones. So we're very happy with the way that's going. Working with the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, and we will be meeting with a couple of universities in the near future to look at programs we might start. We also have had some contact from some business associations in the area who are interested in working with us as well. So things keep growing, and we'll keep you updated because I think that eventually this will be of county-wide interest and something that we can all do for our people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that update. Next is Councillor Mackie.
Thanks, Warden Hicks, and good morning, County Council. This is National Paramedics Week, so I just wanted to extend, a shout out to our great county paramedics. They've certainly stepped up over the last year and done, additional duties in our long-term care facilities, doing COVID testing, vaccinating individuals that are shut into their homes, and a number of other things that went above and beyond. So just wanted to extend our sincere appreciation and have Kevin and Kim pass that along to our paramedic service. Certainly the residents of Grey County are truly well served by this compassionate professional group of individuals in our times of need. So again, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mackie, and yes, indeed, we all join you in that shout out to our paramedics. Councillor Desai, you are next.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. This is more of a personal good news and celebration story, I guess. I got my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine yesterday at 3:37 p.m. I got it at the Hanover vaccine hub, and boy, let me tell you, it's like a machine. Right from the person who was, or the people, in fact, who are directing traffic with those airway traffic cones. To once we entered the door, just the way the line moved along, and we were in and out in, God, I'd like to say 20 minutes, and 15 of those was us sitting around and waiting to see if something bad happened to us. Unfortunately, Councillor Milne wasn't too lucky. I'm still here. I also ran into Scott Taylor, our very own Scott Taylor, who was volunteering at the hub yesterday. So I just wanted to really express gratitude to the team that's been working tirelessly to ensure that we're vaccinated and that we can get back to the way things were 2 years ago. I think I've started practicing social interactions now, so stay. I'll keep you guys posted, and hopefully we'll be able to do this in person very soon. Thank you, Warden Hicks.
Thank you, Councillor Desai, for those remarks. My experience was very similar, and I also hear a number of people making similar remarks as well. And I too join you in thanking all of those volunteers, including county staff who I know have been volunteering to make that those hubs happen. Councillor Robinson, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning to one and all. I would just like to acknowledge that Laurie Smith has won the 2021 Tommy Cooper Award, and you will all recognize that Laurie Smith is a member of the Grey County Agricultural Advisory Committee, and she has a grand distinction in the agricultural sector. So well done to Laurie Smith. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Robinson, can I ask you what, you mentioned the name of the award, what goes behind it? It acknowledges,
just like I said, it's a grand distinction in agriculture. This is an individual that really has represented agriculture for many years and well deserving of the award.
Absolutely. So please extend our congratulations. Indeed. I do not see any other hands, Madam Clerk. And if that's the case, then we will move forward with item number 9, which is an adjournment. So it has been moved by Councillor Milne and seconded by Councillor Burley. Anyone opposed? I'm gathering not. Excellent. So we're going to take a second just to switch to Committee of the Whole. Let me get. Okay, we're back recording again. So I'm going to close that out. And we are now, bear with me a second here while I get the right thing up on the screen. Excellent. So I call this meeting to order. We're now meeting as Committee of the Whole. Council, is there any declaration of interest? I see no one's hands. And once again, I will say that if one does arise during the course of the meeting, I would ask you to declare it at that time. Item number 3, we have several delegations. Madam Clerk is our first delegate here. That's the Ontario Barn Preservation.
Yes, Mr. Leslie Wilson has just joined us.
Excellent. Mr. Wilson, I don't see you on my screen, but I'm going to take it that you are somewhere here.
Yes, I am here.
Excellent. Welcome. And you have the floor.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Warden. And I just, oh, perfect. Yes, it's just up here for the presentation side.
Sorry, this is the incorrect presentation.
Right.
Okay.
Just take a second.
Yep. Mr. Wesley, are you sharing your screen with us today?
No, I was just going to allow you folks to share the presentation slides on your screen and read from there and say next slide when needed.
Okay. Just give us 1 second then, please. Kathy will just bring that up when that presentation up shortly.
There we go.
All right. Well, I'd like to start by thanking the warden, mayors, and deputy mayors for allowing me the opportunity to speak before you all today. My name is Wes Wilson, and before I begin, I'd like to take a brief moment to tell you a bit about myself. I live in Norfolk County, where I'm a descendant of the founding UEL families, where my family has farmed for over 200 years, conserving the original barn that was constructed on our lands for generations. I'm actively involved in several professional committees, including the International Scientific Committees as the representative from Canada of the International Council of Monuments and Sites through the United Nations. In addition, I'm a regional representative of Ontario Barn Preservation, Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, ASHRAE, the Canadian Society for Civil Engineering, and Norfolk Historical Society. I'm currently finishing my degree in Architectural Conservation and Sustainability Engineering at Carleton University, which entails the conservation and sustainable development of historic, new, and existing buildings. I'm here before you today representing Ontario Barn Preservation, which I'm the District 12 representative, along with the policy and advocacy functions of the organization being part of my portfolio. As part of this, we're making a series of deputations to engage municipal councils across the province to advocate for the change of surplus farm dwelling severance policies to avoid the unnecessary demolition of rural agricultural structures. Next slide, please. Ontario Barn Preservation is a not-for-profit started in 2019 to advocate for our heritage barns. We do not advocate for mandatory preservation, but encourage voluntary preservation, reuse, and restoration where possible, and provide the resources for those who are interested. You can check out all our initiatives at ontariobarnpreservation.com. Is it changing to the next slide at all, or is that a lag on my end?
Oh, it is changing.
Okay. Now, in terms of the PPS view on heritage barns, the provincial policy statement view on heritage barns is that significant built heritage resources and significant cultural heritage landscapes shall be conserved. We believe that preserving barns is an important part of this goal. Next slide, please. Although our heritage barns may not have the same functionality they once did, we believe that they're an important part of Ontario's cultural history and rural landscape. They provide landmarks in the countryside for our rural scenery. They have the potential to be reused and repurposed. They're value-added opportunities for agritourism. The reuse of buildings is more environmentally friendly than the use of native new materials, along with providing historical value for research of vernacular architecture and cultural history. They convey an important sentiment to our urban counterparts about the hardworking farming community, and they are useful for small farming operations that contribute to rural economic growth and development for our areas. Next slide, please. Recently, we became aware that the surplus farm dwelling severance policy was causing the unnecessary demolition of heritage barns. Research with municipalities, planners, architects, and engineers, some of the key policies from the provincial policy statement, OMAFRA, zoning, provincial plans, and Ontario Building Code regulations, which are creating difficulties in the conservation of historic barns. Next slide, please. The first policy item we felt was most detrimental to to the structures was the minimum distance separation. So we felt that barns retained on the farmhouse lot were the best solution. When done this way, the barn is already in compliance with the minimum distance regulations. Most owners of these small farms see the barn as a novel asset rather than an obsolete liability. These small farm owners are also interested in hobby farming, adaptive reuse, conservation, starter farms, CSAs, farm gates, and estate residential. We feel that barns severed on the retained farmhouse lot have the greatest chance of success and preservation in the long term. Next slide, please. Now, where a barn is retained on the agricultural lot, being the larger piece, it's in immediate violation of the minimum distance separation requirements, as the related farmhouse is now on a separate property. Now, due to this unsuitability of the barns to house animals or effectively store equipment, most farm owners would be willing to tear it down from a lack of interest in preservation. Next slide, please. Now, some of the solutions we found to this problem were retaining the barn on the farmhouse lot with the minimum limits on animal capacity or areas of this nature, zoning that state that lots must comply with OMAFRA manure management guidelines, or retaining the barn on the farmer's lot and making it unreasonably capable of housing animals. Next slide, please. The next policy item that we felt was most detrimental to heritage barns comes from the provincial policy statement, which states that the new lot will be limited to a minimum size needed to accommodate the use and appropriate sewage and water services. This small lot and restrictive guidelines almost always guarantees the barn be retained on the large agricultural lot, and thus, as explained prior, guarantees its demise. Some solutions we found for this were from municipalities using minimum and maximum lot sizes rather than the above stricter guidelines. They were reviewing each severance on a case-by-case basis to determine the best collection of buildings that optimizes the set for the lot. Now, they also provided language to consider heritage buildings, streetscapes, landscape features, and other site assessments specific to that severance. And some municipalities also did a reasonable use assessment to ensure that the lot was adequately sized for future septic systems. Next slide, please. The next policy item that we found challenging was the designation of non-farm use. And this non-farm use designation of a small residential lot creates a conflict of use in prime agricultural lands and encourages non-farm residents to purchase these properties that can lead to neighbor conflicts. When farmers, where a farm uses these lots, they're permitted on these small plots. And in turn, this encourages farm owners to do reuse, to do farm startup, CSAs, and more. And this also contributes to the rural revitalization, as well as a better chance for success of heritage farms. And next slide, please. The last policy item that was challenging was the mandatory change of use for buildings that do not permit livestock, where a barn needs to be proven not to be capable of housing livestock through OMAFRA distinguishing a building capable of housing livestock animals as one with water and stalls. By removing these items from a heritage barn, it can be proven to be an accessory or shed building, rather than a livestock housing, exempting it from the minimum distance separation requirements and the nutrient management plans. Note that the Ontario Building Code actually does not distinguish the difference between an agricultural shed building or an agricultural livestock building. It only distinguishes between an agricultural building and a Part 9 small building or a Part 3 large building. Doing a mandatory change of use from agricultural into these other categories typically is the result. Part 9 or Part 3 are usually financially challenging and not feasible for most barn owners. We would suggest that wording be clearer in zoning bylaws and not left open to interpretation by officials or OMAFRA guidelines. Next slide, please. And in closing, I would like to leave you with this quote. It is possible that millions now living in North America have never seen a barn, let alone been in one. In the foreseeable future, there is more than a possibility that for many, the kind of barns illustrated in these pages will not be there to be seen. Too often we see these historic structures in poor condition with loose boards flapping in the wind, roofs caved in, or just massive timbers decaying in the ground. We realize that not all barns can be saved, but on behalf of Ontario Barn Preservation, we would encourage you to help find ways to preserve the further unnecessary demolition of our heritage barns, especially in relation to surplus farm dwelling severances. It is our hope that barns of significant cultural heritage value are conserved for future generations. I'd like to thank you for your time here today. And if you have any questions on what has been presented within the slide package and included within your agenda, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. And I have to tell you, I have fond memories of swinging ropes and jumping on haylofts in the barns that we had. Councillor, are there any questions that you have for Mr. Wilson? Councillor or Deputy Warden McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and great presentation. I know you, Wesley, you presented at our Council of Grey Highlands a few weeks back. Certainly very supportive of what you're asking, and I guess I know that basically a lot of those old bank barns were probably designed per 100-acre farms, and each 100-acre farms had a barn, and certainly with the changing with agriculture, you're losing that, I guess, that fabric of rural Ontario. Certainly, it's encouraging what you're asking with regards to those 10-acre or lots that would incorporate the farm, the barn, and maybe other buildings as well. I have seen areas where through the zoning, they may be restricted that there could be 4 horses or so many animal units that would be greatly reduced. So there is some use of that barn, but not to the point where it's an issue that MDS and neighboring residential properties could be a conflict. Certainly, I think as Grey County, we need to look at those maybe those options with that. And I guess my question through you, Mr. Warden, is do we receive this as a delegation, but do we ask that the planning staff of Grey County take a look at this and maybe bring back a report with that suggestion, or at least looking at the possibility of considering this? I know that in my personal situation, I have a barn that was built in 1862. You know, you think about 1862 and you think another 100 years from now, it is a lot of work to keep those barns up and keep them repaired and stuff like that. But you think about future generations of the ability as time goes on, 1, 2, 3, they all start to deteriorate and gets to the point of it's a liability issue, insurance, and cost of upkeep. But I think it is part of maybe us as visionaries, as Grey County councillors, to look at, is there a way of at least putting some policy in place that at least creates a better opportunity for saving those barns? And I think for future generations, it's something that it's unique. They don't build barns like that today, but I think there is a strong culture and historical value to Grey County to see if there are ways to preserve or create policies to look at a better chance of having those for future generations. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. In respect of your suggestion, I think I would be looking to the clerk for some guidance, but nevertheless, it strikes me that it may require you to give a notice of motion and then bring that forward, or unless, of course, and I'll look to Randy for this, unless staff are saying that they had planned in due course to be bringing something forward with respect to this. I don't recall that.
So I do think Randy has some comments surrounding this. So
for sure, and thank you, Mr. Warden, and thanks for the question, Deputy Mayor McQueen, and thanks for the presentation, Wesley. It's great information to have, and it's something that definitely we're interested in exploring further. We are actually planning a housekeeping official plan amendment later this year. So there may be an opportunity as part of that housekeeping official plan amendment to include this, as well as other policy updates and other things that we want to update as part of that official plan amendment to explore this further. And so we'd be happy to work with Wesley and his group to explore some of the recommendations that are put forward here. I know some of the challenges, as Wesley has indicated, are based on some of the provincial policies and MDS guidelines, but there are opportunities to consider some of the recommendations. And I know we've as Deputy Warden McQueen has indicated, we have implemented some of those recommendations in the past on applications to try to preserve those barns, because they are an important part of our cultural history for sure. So that's something that we can definitely explore further to see if we can encourage or increase our policies around this topic matter. And like I said, we'd be happy to work with Wesley and council on how we can maybe explore these recommendations further. So I don't know if that's enough to or if we need a formal motion or notice of motion, but that's something that we can definitely consider as part of that housekeeping amendment.
It looks like we've lost.
Did we lose the warden?
Warden. So
His computer didn't lie. It ran out of power.
So Deputy Warden McQueen, I'll let you
Sure.
take the meeting until we hear back from Warden Hicks.
Okay, I had a follow-up question, so I can't really ask myself the same question, other than I guess just a follow-up to that. I would say that that's great news, and I certainly support that in the sense of that coming forward. And so I'll leave it. I do have another comment, but I'll wait till if there are other comments from council. Comments, help me out
I
here.
see Councillor Robinson.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Warden. I do want to say that I agree with you. I think it would be great, and if staff could look at any policies that could be tied into our official plan. But I also want to include the Grey County Agriculture Advisory Committee. So I would suggest that Grey County Council extend an invitation to the folks, including Wesley, to do the presentation to the Grey County Agricultural Advisory Committee and see what they have to say, have their input, their support, their suggestions that could also be factored back into a discussion for Grey County Council. Thank you. And I would include that in a motion if you're going to make that, Deputy Warden McQueen. I would second that, to have that inclusion.
So thank you, Councillor Robinson. Maybe I'll go to either the clerk or the CAO in the sense of process, in the sense of your point about the agriculture advisory agenda. Is that something that needs a motion for that, or is that something that could be a friendly suggestion that could be added? I guess that's through either the clerk or through the CAO.
So I'll take that, Deputy Warden. And we actually do have an Agricultural Advisory Committee coming in June. So I will reach out to Mr. Wilson and invite him to that meeting to provide the same presentation he did today. Excellent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I see the CAO did pop up. I don't know if you wish to speak on that or all.
Thank you. I had the same thought that this would be a really appropriate discussion at that table.
Great. So going back to Councillor Robinson, do you still wish to us to pursue that, or is that satisfactory to your comment or your question?
Oh, absolutely. It's going to happen, and I think that's really important. And then as there's a few of us on County Council that have been appointed to the Grey County Agriculture Advisory Committee, and we'll have that discussion and then bring back any recommendations from the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Those issues you raised, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Carlton, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. I'd just like to thank Mr. Wilson for the presentation. As somebody who also owns one of those heritage barns, mine's not quite as old. It was built in 1902. And with my husband, we've spent 39 years trying to make sure that thing stays standing. So, and we're also fortunate. Within a mile of where I live, there are 5 barns being kept up. So it is good to see. I grew up on a farm, so grew up seeing a barn all the time. And I'm glad to see someone taking this on and ensuring that we keep that history going forward. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Carlton. My phone rang, so I went to mute there for a second, and thank you for that. And yeah, it's great that you're continuing to preserve that barn. Are there any other comments, questions from County Council? Just a comment I do have to Wesley is through certain heritage committees, are there barns getting designated as heritage structures? I don't know if Wesley can answer that question.
Yeah.
Wesley?
So in terms of with your council, do I have to say through the warden?
Through myself, I guess, as
Okay.
Deputy Warden, yes.
Through yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
I would, in terms of heritage barns, there are a few that are designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. In terms of a recent one that I'm aware of is through the City of London, through their rural areas that are included within the city boundary. There are some designated. In addition to that, there are a few within Norfolk County that are designated, along within other areas of Ontario in more city rural mix regions. There aren't a great number, to be quite honest. However, there are, to my knowledge, just over 2 dozen. Okay,
well, that's well, that's 2 dozen better than not, right? And that's right. So, did the warden has he rejoined us, Madam Clerk?
Yes, he just has.
Okay, so I'll pass the meeting because he has the sheet in front of him who's moved and seconded this. So, or maybe he's already read that out. I guess that's true. I'll pass it back to the warden.
My apologies, folks. Can you all hear me? I'm just, let's see, nods. I don't know if you folks can hear me. Madam Clerk?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, my apologies. Technology at its finest, right? Okay, so we're back. I don't know quite what I missed. I gather that questions continued.
So, Mr. Warden, there was a suggestion that Mr. Wilson be invited to the June Agricultural Advisory Committee. So the clerk staff will work with that. That was a suggestion from Councillor Robinson. There were a couple more questions with Mr. Wilson, and that's where it stands.
Okay, and so last I had Councillor Robinson. Did Councillor Robinson get a chance to ask her question?
Yes, she did, and that was surrounding the Agricultural Advisory Committee invitation.
Okay, excellent. And are there, this is a new device for me, so I'm struggling. I can't see everyone. I can see you, and I don't know how to change it so I can see everyone. Oh, D. Valerie, let's see. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Wonderful. Okay, I do not see any other hands. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. So I will thank the delegate, and I don't have his name in front of me because my screen is down, but I apologize for that. But we thank you. Oh, Mr. Wilson, thank you for that presentation. I look forward to meeting you at the next Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting. Cheers now. Okay. I'm still pulling up my agenda again, Madam Clerk. So who is our second delegate?
So we have Russ Pearson and Kevin Lind representing Gray Road 17B concerns. They have joined us.
Good morning.
Hi.
I apologize for the technical difficulties I'm experiencing here, but you now have the floor and welcome.
Thank you very much. And good morning. I assume everyone's had a bit of time to review the presentation as well as the petitions and stories that a number of the residents provided, but I'm going to focus on the presentation today. So We're here to propose lowering the speed limit on Grey Road 17B to 50 kilometers an hour. In advance of the meeting, we presented this to Georgian Bluffs Council to seek their support. We appreciate that this is a county road and the decision ultimately rests with you, but I thought it was relevant to present a proposal to you all that Georgian Bluffs fully supports. And this is about keeping our roads safe, plain and simple. You'll see on slide 3 here, we've outlined where we'd like to see the speed limit lowered to 50 kilometers an hour. Much of the traffic that uses 17B uses it as an alternate route. Kathy, if you don't mind moving to the next slide. Thank you. Uses it as an alternate route to Highway 6 and 21 to travel in and out of Bowen Sound, or as a bypass for travelers headed to Sauble or the Peninsula. If you flip to the next slide, here's what we're dealing with. So last year, the OPP set up a traffic monitoring equipment on 17B to collect volume and speed data. We see on average 5,000 vehicles a day on 17B, and here's the disturbing part, is almost half the vehicles are speeding. So to get from one blue star to the other, the difference is 700 meters, and the travel time is approximately equal, whether you use 17B or the highway. By dropping the speed limit on 17B to 50 kilometers an hour, it would help divert traffic to the highway where this volume of traffic should be traveling. And we're talking about increasing the time for a local commuter by seconds, not minutes, but we're guiding non-local motorists to use the highway. Almost daily, there's articles in the local papers about speeding and road safety as a primary concern for the community up here. And despite the awareness over the long weekend, we still saw a number of stunt driving charges handed out in Grey Bruce. They're not just speeding on highways. If their GPS or their Google Maps tells them to use 17B because it's seconds faster than the highway, they're speeding through this community. If you flip to the next page, here's some things to consider. With almost half the cars going through 17B speeding, there's no question that we can prevent future accidents by lowering the speed limit. There's too much going on this road for cars to be traveling at not only the existing posted rates, but at higher speeds. When I presented to Georgian Bluffs, we reported that there had been at least 6 serious accidents in the last 20 years requiring EMS. And with the volume of traffic increasing, doing nothing is only going to cause more accidents. My property is adjacent to the Bruce Trail and the conservation area. And because of COVID, I've been working from home since March of last year. There's a parking lot in 17B that it's never been busier. It's a small lot, maybe 4 cars can fit in there. You have overcrowding. The cars are starting to park along 17B. It's a blind lot at the top of the hill on the edge of the escarpment. The Bruce Trail also exits onto 17B, literally on the crest of the hill. There's little visibility for both hikers and motorists when they come out from the trail onto 17B and they end up on the shoulder of the highway or of the county road, walking back to the parking lot. So as I mentioned, both Russ and I live on the corner lots of West Street abutting 17B, and really this street should have probably never been placed where it is at the top of the hill, but kind of is what it is. So without edging out, you can't really see down the escarpment, and with almost half the motorists speeding, there's little reaction time to merge with traffic. In fact, further to this point, last week, there was a motorcycle accident on 17B that was nearly fatal, and it required EMS, as well as the fire department and police. The motorcyclist had to ditch his bike. He ended up sliding onto oncoming traffic, and thankfully there wasn't a car coming the other way, or else he might not be here. And this is all because a motorist couldn't see down the hill and failed to yield and properly merge with traffic. Like, this road is littered with vulnerabilities that increase the probability of accidents at current speed limits, especially with half the motorists speeding. So it's also not the overlooked wildlife. There's a conservation area that straddles my property. Is about 20 acres at the other side of the county road. There's a conservation area. There's tons of wildlife that flock back and forth between my property and the conservation area. And there's little to no reaction time to safely slow down if you're speeding. Again, which almost half the people are. So another important point to make is that as we get into the summer weather, we can't forget that 4 to 5 months a year we have snow on the ground, and driving conditions in Grey County in the winter at the best of times can be dangerous. And one of the residents who signed the petition supporting the lowered speed limit mentioned in their petition how they get 20 to 30 cars in his ditch or driveway because of speeding motorists. So even at my place, turning left onto West Street, cars have ended up in Russ's front ditch that I've had to help push out. And we're talking about a very basic left-hand turn. And that's because people are speeding and they can't properly slow down. The last couple points are equally as important, maybe the most. We have a ton of non-local motorists using 17B as a bypass to get to Sauble Beach or Tobermory. And why? It's because apps like Google Maps and Waze use algorithms to get their user from point A to point B the most efficient way. That's why they're using 17B. It's marginally faster to go from one blue star to the other, and lowering the speed limit will help mitigate the algorithms and divert traffic back to the highway. Needless to say, Google Maps does not let their user know that there are blind parking lots ahead, hidden driveways, the Bruce Trail, potential for wildlife. So we need to work within the system to guide non-local motorists to use the highways. And as I mentioned to Georgian Bluffs, that it's only a matter of time until someone's critically injured or we see a fatal accident on this road. And we came real close a week ago. The speed limit just needs to be lowered. The upcoming road work this summer on 17B includes adding a 1.5 meter paved shoulder for a bike lane. And this is part of Grey County's Cycling and Trails Master Plan. The scope of the work does not include widening the road or any tree removals, which means the net effect is that the lanes will be narrower and the sight lines are unchanged. So when we already know almost half the motorists are speeding and we're adding a bike lane, which will encourage more pedestrian traffic on this road, and we're narrowing the road lanes, we need to take preventative measures to lower the speed to reduce the possibility of an accident. It's just common sense. If you flip to slide 6, this isn't a reason why you lower the speed limit, but it's a residual benefit. And by diverting traffic back to the highway, there are a ton of local businesses that need any and all the help they can get. Driving traffic through commercial areas will drive more business. And given the disruption we've seen through COVID to businesses throughout the community over the past year, this is just an easy way to help businesses while meanwhile, and most importantly, keeping the community safe. Flipping to slide 7, some of the residents who signed the petition did a bit of work presenting this very valid and I think important message. The county and Georgian Bluffs signed on to this initiative in December of last year. This is the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. We're 5 months in. Page 1 of the introduction states, and I quote, "Levels of satisfaction among people residing in Bruce and Grey counties are comparatively lower for how well they feel the local government is responding to their community needs." End quote. In fact, a priority risk area is crime prevention, and several comments in the local survey mentioned concern about road safety issues. So here we are as residents asking our local government to respond to our community needs. It's time to show us that you're listening. 100% of the residents along 17B and the area support lowering the speed limit. On slide 8, while I would encourage you to read all of the notes in the petitions that were signed, here are a couple notes. We have one resident whose daughter is afraid to go to the mailbox at the end of their driveway because of the speeding traffic. A couple of years ago, a local resident, Susan Frook, almost was hit by a car as she was walking her dog. The dog was tragically killed and the driver was charged with careless driving, but this is just an example of what we're trying to avoid. And while Susan lost her dog, and I want to be respectful of that, there are families on this road, young families, myself included, and supporting us to drop the speed limit here is doing your part to help keep this area safe, because nobody wants an even more tragic situation. And lastly is dropping the speed limit down to 50 kilometers an hour is the right thing to do. And given the upcoming road work this summer, we think it makes sense that upon completion, the new speed limits come into place so that when motorists get back to using 17B, they realize that it's time to slow down. So on behalf of the residents of 17B and all the residents that signed and supported the petition on this initiative, thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Min. I just want to be clear, if I can, your proposal is that the speed limit be changed on Grey Road 17B, both the section running, I will say east-west, and the section running north-south?
The section running north-south is already 50 kilometers an hour. Okay. The section running east-west scales up to 60 kilometers an hour for about a kilometer and ends up at 70 kilometers an hour as you head towards Highway 6 to head up the peninsula.
So it's that east-west portion that you're seeking a change for.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me that clarification. Councillor Desai, you'll be first. Councillor Crowley, I see you have your hand up. I'll take you next.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. So my question was with regards to the statistics. Mr. Lynn, you mentioned about half of the vehicles were speeding. When you mention speeding, what's the threshold for speeding? Is 1 kilometer over the speed limit considered speeding, or is 5, 10? What's that threshold? Thank you, Warden.
Well, I think the threshold is speeding over the speed limit. And I can tell you that there are a number of motorists within that data collection that the OPP presented to us that were going at least 10 kilometers, if not 15 to 20 kilometers over the speed limit.
And do you, sorry, Warden Hicks, if I may continue, thank you. Would you, of the 50% that was speeding, off the top of your head, if possible, do you know what percentage would have been going 10, 15 kilometers over?
The 40% that was speeding, I would say at least half of them, if not more.
Warden Hicks, and I'm looking at you at this point for procedural clarity. In Toronto, what they've got, they've implemented the automatic speed enforcement devices. They've done so in Brampton as well, and they're highly recommended, especially in those urban areas. They've proven to be very useful. And I would like for council to consider something along those lines. Would it be something that I would request of staff through a report, Warden Hicks, or how would I be able to bring that forward to council? Thank you.
So I know that Heather is first to go here, but I would suggest that either you'd have to bring a notice of motion, or perhaps staff are indicating that they were planning to do something around that in any case, which would eliminate your need for bringing a motion. Heather, am I correct there?
You are correct, Mr. Warden, and I know Mr. Hoy is on the meeting today. I think it was his intent in July to bring forward a report on Bylaw 4788, which is the county's traffic control and parking bylaw, with a number of recommendations. And should council wish to pursue that, we would just, it would be my recommendation that we have a motion out of today's delegation that considerations for 17B be included within that report.
So Madam Clerk, can we have a motion out of today's delegation, or do we require Councillor Desai, for example, to bring a notice of motion?
We can have a resolution out of today's that staff be directed to bring back background information and recommendations related to the speed concerns on Grey County Road 17B as part of the upcoming report on Bylaw 4788-13.
Excellent. Councillor Desai, I see your hand still, yes?
Thank you. I think the clerk and I are on different pages, probably the same song. The question I had, Clerk Morrison, was with regards to the automatic speed enforcement devices. I don't think they would be local to just 17B, but to look at the entire county and a strategy to use these devices across the entire county.
So, Mr. Warden, my apologies. I'm not aware of those. So I would look to either our CAO or our Director of Transportation to speak to that question.
Okay, perhaps I see Pat had his hand up. So Pat, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I could speak to that. We've been kind of monitoring the situation with municipalities that have brought in the automatic speed devices and ticketing process, but we'd be happy to bring that back in a report because we've kind of been looking at it. I mean, the one thing is it's very, very cost prohibitive. And there's a lot of issues with your court with the increase in tickets. And the other thing just about the funding model, which you don't really think of, is because Toronto has been doing very well with these speed cameras. The downside of them, which seems counterintuitive, is If they don't work and people actually slow down, then you can't pay for them. Do you know what I mean? Like you're kind of paying for it through income, through speeding. If they work and no one speeds, then you're spending a lot of money on something that is not bringing any income. So I haven't seen any real small municipalities do it. And maybe that's why, because the locals eventually are going to figure it out and maybe not speed. The one thing I just wanted to say, just about to thank Mr. Pearson and Mr. Lind. We've been dealing with Mr. Pearson for a long time. We had recommended against this speed decrease only because people do not follow the speed limit sign. Changing a sign isn't really going to make anyone go any slower. That we've seen that time and again. So that's what's been our reluctance to change the speed, is that it's just not going to be effective. And in many cases, certain residents will obey the speed, for example. In this case, actually, to add to Mr. Lynn's data, we went out and did a count the last few weeks. And our data says 77% of people are speeding in the 60 zone near Park Street. So it's even higher than the 50. And just kind of what Councillor Desai was talking about how fast they're going. In that area, we had 85% of people are going 73 or less in the 60. So the majority of people are within 15 over, but 85% of people, 77% of people are still going over the speed limit. That being said, the problem is if you change it to a 50, then someone, like the way my mother drives, would go 47. Other people are still going to go 73 because they feel comfortable driving 73. The road's designed to 80. So it just creates speed variances, which are also very, very dangerous. If everyone would follow the speed limit, yes, 50 would be safer. But because the majority of people don't, it makes it hard for us to just make it so easy, like changing the sign. So, but yeah, we'd be happy to address the cameras, and in our traffic and parking bylaw, we would address Mr. Pearson and Mr. Lynn's concerns as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hoy. Councillor Broley, I am going to come to you. I see you waving your hand, but I want to make sure that I'm finished with Councillor Desai. Councillor Desai, are you for now?
So I think my questions are answered for now, and I've gathered, just to see clarity, I've gathered that I don't need to make a notice of motion because staff will be bringing information with regards to the devices at the one of the July meetings. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So
the CAO is waving.
So let me acknowledge, and Councillor Broley, I apologize, but I think I will turn next to our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And thank you, Mr. Lind and Mr. Pearson. That was an excellent presentation. You obviously put a lot of work and thought into that. I think you raise an important point with regard to the algorithms and the fact that you have people who are not resident in the area being guided to this location through their in-car. Anyway, what I wanted to say is I think that bears some more scrutiny and some more discussion. I think we need to look carefully at our ability to influence that, and whether or not, is lowering the speed limit, which will influence how the algorithm thinks that this should track, the only tool that we have in the toolbox when it comes to influencing how people are directed onto these roads. I don't know the answer to that, but it's a very interesting question, and I'm sorry if you're all getting terrible feedback from me. I'll stop talking, but I do think that that's something that we want to take a hard look at.
Thank you, Madam CAO. And Mr. Pearson, I do see you, but I know that Councillor Broley has been waving his hand for a very long time. I'm going to go to Councillor Broley next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Kevin, thanks very much for your presentation. It is the second time we've seen it. You did present to Georgian Bluffs. One speeding car is too many, Councillor Tsai. What I'd like to see come out of this, lowering the speed limit may not be the right reason, I don't know. But what I like to see is, I like to see the Director for Transportation, Pat Hoy, talk to the Director of Operations, Stephen Domar at Georgian Bluffs, and address many, many issues along this road other than speeding. Great concerns at Park Street intersection, great concerns with West Street intersection, great concerns for the trails coming onto this piece of road. It's great that it is a county road, but I'm quite sure the county and Georgian Bluffs, we need to stay in our lane and not in yours. But I would hope you would have a great conversation with our staff and see if there's any way we can address many, many concerns along this stretch of road. And I'm quite sure we can do that. And I really feel this is the time that we should do it. Yes, there is a lot of traffic going up through there. And I don't know if reducing the speed limit will change it, but we still need to address all the other safety concerns that are along that road. And Pat, I'm hoping you can talk to Steve and have some great conversations and see if we can look at the whole issue along that stretch of road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burley. I'm going to turn next to Councillor Potter, but before I go to you, Councillor Potter, Mr. Pearson, I know that you had your hand waving, and it's probably with respect to the last speaker. Perhaps you could go before I turn to Councillor Potter.
Yes, thanks. Just in addition, this is a residential neighborhood. There are about 28 to 30 homes on the roadway, but there are about 200 other homes that must use the roadway to access their street. So there is a quality of life issue. And just yesterday, as I was heading into town, a great big monster quarry truck, which was about 70 feet long, carrying these, and we've all seen these monster stones, and it was heading eastbound down 17B, going through Owen Sound. I only can imagine or assume that it was not heading to Toronto. It must have been heading east of Owen Sound. But there it was on 17B, and a truck of that magnitude in this residential neighborhood really had no business being on this roadway and having to go down through Nichols Gully. And it must be because, as Kevin said, the algorithms are showing him from Wyerton to be heading to wherever he's going, Oshawa or Orangeville or Stayner or someplace. He was heading east for sure, but he was going through 17B, and that was a truck that really, and we see this going both ways coming through, and I'm wondering, well, you know, these big vehicles really shouldn't be on this roadway, and especially since it's a residential roadway. So it's not just the speeding issue, it's the whole issue of the type of traffic and the percentage that are, in fact, 2,400 vehicles every day going past here that are speeding on this roadway every day.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Potter, you next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I'll try to be brief. I just think this is an example of the kind of situation we're seeing more and more of throughout Grey County. In all our municipalities, we certainly are seeing it over here. And nobody likes to see speed limits change, especially to see them reduced. But things are changing. And I can remember when this was a very quiet little road, and it's changed quite a bit now. It's why we need to look at this whole problem regionally, because we're just going to be putting out fires here, there, and everywhere unless we get a handle on this on a regional basis. Traffic is a bit like water. You have to learn to get it to run where you want it to go. And if we don't want it, especially big truck traffic and intercity traffic to be using this road at high speeds, then we have to slow it down and not just use, maybe if we don't use the speed limit controls, maybe we use some other form of traffic calming to slow the traffic down. But we're seeing this more and more throughout the area. If we want to have more cycling and pedestrian areas, we can expect that that's going to coexist with 80-kilometer speed limits and roads through residential and commercial areas. So I think we need to look at this very carefully, because I think it is a model for what we're seeing throughout the county. When you start citing statistics, All I can think of is I don't know how many cars it takes to hit somebody. But at that point, statistics don't matter to somebody who's jumping into a snowbank to get out of the way of an accident. So I'll just leave you with that thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Madam CAO, I see your hand again. No? Okay. Councillor Body, you're next.
Thank you very much, Warden Hicks. I've got friends that live along there, so I'm quite familiar with it. I'm not surprised that it's more like 77% that are speeding. You know, I've taken that road. I'm guilty as everybody else. Pat referred to, I think, 87 and 70. I wonder what happens when they come over the hill and hit the 60 if they're not maintaining the same speed. The algorithms, I adopt what Kim said. The algorithms are something that I hadn't thought about before, and it was informative. And if we did lower it to 50, then we probably would force more cars onto the Sunset Strip where they should be. I'm wondering about, yes, we need to look at this maybe across the whole county, but this is one that's right before us. And I'm wondering if we could be moving to ask for a report to come back to council on this strip in particular and deal with it versus it being kind of thrown into the shuffle with everything else. I'm looking to the clerk for this, given that we were asking that I would be asking for a report and we'd be actually making the decision when the report comes back. Could I not make the motion today to ask for that staff report?
For you, Mr. Warden, absolutely. Coming out of the delegation, there can be direction from council, specifically related to the information brought forward by the delegation. So if council chooses, there could be a resolution, a motion put on the floor directing staff to bring back a report related to the speed on Grey Road 17B. As I did note earlier, Director Hoy is bringing back Bylaw 4788, which does deal with speeding and speed levels in certain areas within the county. And this could certainly be included in that report. And that report is scheduled to come to Committee of the Whole in July.
So would I need a motion to add that to the report specifically?
I did have a motion prepared in case council decided that they wish to go that way. And for your consideration, that staff be directed to bring back background information recommendations related to speed on Grey Road 17B as part of a report related to changes to Bylaw 4788-13, being the county's traffic control and parking bylaw, scheduled for July 2021.
There you go, Councillor Body. That's our clerk at work. Now,
I can make that motion now, Mr.
So I guess the real question is, do you want to make that motion, or are you satisfied that that issue will be dealt with as part of Mr. Hoy's report to come in July? So I'm hearing that you would like to be dealt with separately and that you would like to indeed bring that motion now. Correct?
I would. Yes, I would. Thank you.
So, Madam Clerk, do I continue to deal with the other questions, or is it proper now to turn to getting a seconder and dealing with the motion before us?
I think Kim would like to speak, and then I'd just like some clarification on specifically the direction that Councillor Body is looking for, if it's not related to the speed concerns and including them in the upcoming report.
Madam CAO.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Mr. Warden. My suggestion would be that in the discussion regarding the speed bylaw, we deal with the speed question at that time, since we had a number of initiatives that we already needed to address, and that report was coming anyway. I think we can make the recommendation to adjust the speed on this road when that comes forward. In addition, though, I think we've heard a number of other questions raised about this particular road, the what's planned as far as the construction this year, taking a look at these intersections and driveways, et cetera, the discussion that has been suggested we need to have with Georgian Bluffs. I think that all of that deserves its own report and discussion. And so we can deal with this speed issue very, very quickly. Some of these other items, I think Pat and his team will need to, really take a look at what the situation is and what opportunities we have to be making some adjustments there. So if that's okay with council, that would be my recommendation. And Pat, you probably can't turn all of that around in the next couple of weeks. So you may need a little bit more time, but is that okay to bring that back?
Yep, sure, yep.
Okay, so I turn back to you, Councillor Boddy. The recommendation is that the speed request issue would be dealt with in a few weeks, in July, I'm hearing, as part of Mr. Hoy's report. But there are some additional things that I believe you and others would like to see addressed with respect to this road, and it may have an impact even broader. And I guess the recommendation is that you would bring a specific motion with respect to that the motion would be for staff to bring back a report that addresses the other concerns beyond just speed with respect to Grey Road 17B.
Yeah, I'd be willing to make that report or make that motion. Maybe what we could do, Warden Hicks, is just, I think Sue and Shirley want to speak to it, and that may give Heather a second just to get your thoughts that are going to come out of my mouth down on paper. So if you want to come back to me after hearing from the others, we can maybe be ready.
Right. So, Madam Clerk, does that make sense? We'll give you a little bit of time to wordsmith something. You've heard the comments from our CAO. You've heard the request of Councillor Boddy and Councillor Desai. We'll just give you a bit of time.
Thank you.
Something while we allow the other speakers to proceed.
Sure, thank you.
Next on my list, and I see Councillor Burley, you've got your hand waving, but I did have Councillor Keaveney for quite some time. I'll get to you, Councillor Burley. But next is Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, and appreciate the discussion. And I agree with Councillor Potter. This is a regional issue. Speeding is a problem all over the county, and we'll get to that. But I agree and would be happy to second the motion to move forward and address the issue on 17 today. What I wondered is, if I may, is inquire of the councillors from Georgian Bluffs about engagement with the OPP. I'm just curious to know if that discussion would be part of the report. And I'm sure the OPP are aware of the issue, and has there been increased presence, or just is there any feedback from conversations with the OPP regarding this problem on County Road 17?
Huh?
Yeah, I could speak to that. Whenever we get a speed complaint, we notify the OPP. I haven't acknowledged that road because I take it every day, at least twice a day as well, typically. I do notice, just from my experience, that the OPP used to sit at Park Street quite a bit. Most times I would see them when I came over the hill. I don't really see them much there anymore. Now, whenever we get a speed complaint, we notify the OPP. But I don't know if it's just speeding is so rampant, they have a lot of other issues to address. But I do notice there's a lot of places that they used to sit that you don't see them quite as much now. I know we've been dealing with a group with MTO and the OPP, and the provincial highway speeding, I think it's sort of overwhelming everything else a little bit right now, because there's huge issues there too. So we do talk to the police quite a bit and mention our concern areas to them.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Keaveney?
No, thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. I'm going to go, here's the order I'm going to go in. Councillor Carleton, Burley, and Mackie. Okay, so Councillor Carleton.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I would just like to add my comments about the algorithms. I think getting that traffic that's not our own residents off of that road would make a huge difference, move them back out to where they should be in an 80-kilometer zone. And as well, I would wonder about some better signage down there stating that there is a conservation authority, that the Bruce Trail is coming out on that road. We do have big trucks coming down 17 to the T where 17B is. Most of those are going to head out to the highway because they know the route. I fully support what the residents are asking here. I travel that road daily as well because it's the quick way for me into town if I'm going down 14th Street West. So it's just a shorter way, not speeding, but I would certainly support having it down to a 50 there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Carlton. Councillor Burley, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I agree 100% with Councillor Body. I really feel that we should address this particular section of road now, even though it is a county issue across the board. I think we should address the concerns. My big concerns as Mayor George and Bless listen to our ratepayers, that there's many other concerns besides speeding along this road. We have two roads coming out, which I mentioned before. We have a lot of action with walking trails and everything else going on there. And I really feel that we should have our Director of Operation or Director of Transportation bring back a report on this particular section of road with recommendations of how we can correct a lot of safety issues and so on along this road. Just so County Council knows, this has been turned over to our Police Service Board. We have been talking to Deborah, the OPP commander, on this section of road. They are looking at it. They have looked at it, and it's on their radar, just so everyone knows. But I really feel that we need to address this particular section of road now, not waiting for a big overall countywide report to come through. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Burley. And next is Councillor Mackie.
Thanks, Warden, and I certainly appreciate the conversation. And as other members and colleagues have mentioned, there's a specific recommendation or request before us today, and I certainly support that from a safety standpoint. But I think it really does beg the bigger question about what the county and certainly Councillor Potter and Keaveney had mentioned. We need to our transportation master plan. We really need to be looking at the roles and the goals of our county transportation system. And a number of our legacy county roads are now residential areas, and if the role of county roads are to move goods and services, sometimes that's in conflict with a residential area. So I think the broader picture needs to be looked at, but specifically for this request, I certainly support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackie. Mr. Lind, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple closing remarks, just to remind everybody that the difference between going between those two blue stars in the presentation is 700 meters. So it's not a long distance, but it makes a big difference for the people that are using that road. And like I said, there is a bike lane as part of the Grey County Master Plan being put in. It's a 1.5 meter bike lane. And because the road itself is not being changed, there's no tree removals or anything, that the net effect of that is that the lanes will be narrower. And so that makes it, you're encouraging pedestrian traffic, cyclists, runners, hikers, etc., to use that road. And by not changing the speed limit and making it a safer road, we are inviting more accidents to happen naturally. And I understand Patrick's comment about speeders will be speeders, but speeders who are speeding at 25 kilometers or 30 kilometers an hour more than the posted speed limit makes a difference. If the OPP catches them in their insurance premiums, in their demerit points, it makes a difference. So I do think it is an effective tool to lower the speed limit. I think it's the right timing is now, because we're having this road work done. It's going to naturally divert traffic anyways to the highway as the road work is being done. So when you get onto a new paved road, speeders speed when they see new asphalt, speeders speed naturally. And I think it's a good time to post that speed limit to 50 kilometers an hour to show them that this is a slower road now. So again, thank you very, very much for everybody's time here. And once again, like I said, 100% of the residents signed a petition saying that this road is dangerous as it is. And so that's why we're here today, asking you to listen to us.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Madam Clerk, have you had sufficient time? I do see your hand, Councillor O'Leary. I'll come to you in a second. Do you require a bit more time, Madam Clerk?
No, Kathy actually has been typing very furiously beside me here.
Okay. But maybe before you go, just before
Yes.
you go, I know that you're ready. Councillor O'Leary, I did see your hand go up. Do you want to maybe go ahead?
Sure, thanks, Mr. Warden. Just a comment. I think if you research, you'll find that cities like Mississauga, Ajax, London, Orangeville, Aurelia, they're changing their speed limits from 50 kilometers an hour to 40 entirely right across their city. So to Councillor Potter's point, things are changing, and that is a fact. And I think this is a fair ask, and I appreciate the presentation from Kevin and Russ. One of the things that lowering the speed limit will do is change the mentality, and the mentality of the people that are using this road is to get there faster. It's going around the other way. And the distance between the two is so close, the only way you can beat all the other traffic is to speed. So I think this is a fair ask, and I'm certainly in favor of lowering the speed limit. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Pat, I saw your hand up, but then it came down.
Yeah, I just want to talk maybe about the narrower lanes. We used to use the MTO manual a lot, which there was a lot of 3.75 lanes. Now the TAC has kind of taken over from the MTO manual. So the lanes are narrower, they're getting narrower. That is its own traffic calming measure a little bit. As I've said many times, the only thing that really slows you down is that feeling of being slightly confined, I guess. So that, and as far as trees, they're sort of a traffic calming measure too. Obviously, we have a clear zone that we have to abide by. You don't want a tree or hazard in the clear zone, but that road, same with modern planning design and complete streets. It's a noble goal. And speeding is our biggest concern in transportation too, because we can't seem to stop it. No matter what sign we change, we changed Dundalk from a 50 to a 40, everybody's going the same speed. So, it's frustrating for us too. It's not that we're fighting to keep the speeds up. I don't want to seem like that's what we're doing. And as far as the algorithms that I want to talk about, that was the first thing we talked to. We've been talking to our IT department about trying to get to the bottom of it, because I don't know entirely if it's based on, how does Waze know what the posted speed is, or is it based on what traffic's actually traveling, tracking people on their phones? You know how they can tell you that a road is red when there's a traffic jam ahead. So we're trying to get to the bottom of that too, because I'm the first to admit that it really shouldn't be, and I've talked to Mr. Pearson about this multiple times. It really serves more a local purpose. We listed it as a local road. It'd be better for us if everyone stay on the highway. That Alpha Street intersection is not great either. Alpha Street comes right out too close to the intersection, that MTO intersection. So we'd like to get cars off that road too. It's just, we just feel that putting it to a 50 is not necessarily the right way to do it. Anyway.
Okay, we've had very good discussion. Madam Clerk, I'm going to turn to you. I think it's time to put a question before Council.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So just a couple of comments. Council can make a motion today related to the delegation. If there's anything general in nature that they want brought back, it would be my recommendation that come through a notice of motion, but specifically for 17B, the motion that's been drafted, the council or that staff be directed to bring back background information and recommendations related to speed on Grey Road 17B as part of a report related to changes to Bylaw 4788-13, being the county's traffic control and parking bylaw, scheduled for July 2021, and that transportation staff work with Georgian Bluffs operational staff to assess additional concerns raised on Grey Road 17B and bring back a report outlining the challenges and potential solutions to council later in the summer.
Okay, so just to be clear, I see a lot of nodding heads. So just to be clear, the speeding issue will be dealt with as part of this motion and not necessarily as part of the report coming back in July. the rate of speed?
So the rate of speed is part of bylaw 4788. It is part of our county traffic control bylaw, rates of speed. So that the speeding issue itself will be contained within the report that Pat and his staff are bringing back. And I think it's scheduled for the first meeting in July.
Yes.
And then other concerns related to 17B, challenges, opportunities, and solutions will be brought back in a further report later this summer.
Excellent. So Councillor Body, I turn to you next. Are you satisfied with the motion as you hear it? Are there any changes that you're wanting?
No, I'd be willing to make the motion as read out by Madam Clerk. Thank you.
Excellent. And I'm going to say that it's moved by, seconded by Councillor Keaveney, because she did indicate that she'd be willing to support such a motion. Councillor Keaveney, are you satisfied with the motion as you've heard it, and are you prepared to second it?
Yes, and yes, Mr. Warden.
Okay. The rest of council, does anyone need any clarification of what we're voting on, or do you feel satisfied? Just let me see. If you're satisfied, let me see some nodding of heads. If you're not satisfied, throw your hand up and ask your question. Otherwise, we're going to put it to a vote. I do not see any hands. And with that said, I think I'm going to call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? I do not see any hands. So that is carried. And with that, Mr. Lind and Mr. Pearson, I want to thank you very much. We had quite the discussion here, and good for you for being advocates for your community. I thank you very much. And you've put a lot of work, obviously, into this delegation. We thank you for that. All right, Council, it is now 5 past. We have one more delegation. Madam Clerk, is Ms. DeSanti with us? Yes,
she is, Mr. Warden. It will be a longer discussion. It will, I think they're planning on about 30 minutes for this particular delegation because we've invited them to come.
Right. Ms. DeSanti, could I ask, would you mind if Councillor took a break before we turn to your delegation?
Not a problem.
That would be very, very good. Council, if we could come back, is 20 past enough time? Yes? Gives us just over 10 minutes. So we'll take a break and we'll reconvene at 11:20 sharp. All right, about 30 seconds and counting. Okay, so it is now 20 past. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do, Mr. Warden.
Excellent, thank you very much. Stephanie, I believe you're going to introduce Ms. DeSanti to us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden and County Council. Good morning. I'm here this morning to introduce the successful consultant team that will be helping Grey County complete an age-friendly community strategy and action plan. This project will be primarily funded through the province of Ontario, and more specifically through the Inclusive Community Grants Program, where the county was awarded $60,000 for this project. The county completed an RFP process last month, and we've issued the project, or awarded the project to WSP Consulting. In order to meet the grant requirements, this project is needing to be completed by March of next year. We're extremely thrilled to be working with WSP with this project. They come to us with a lot of experience in the age-friendly domains, where we see this project connecting with and building off existing work that has already taken place throughout the county, bringing awareness around the importance and value of instilling age-friendly community lens throughout practice and decision-making. Key members of the WSP team include Nadia DeSanti, who's here with us today. She has over 20 years of experience as a registered professional planner, and more specifically, her experience for age-friendly community planning focuses on she recently helped the City of Brampton complete an age-friendly community strategy and action plan, as well completed an age-friendly study for the town of Caledon, an age-friendly community action plans for the municipality of St. Charles, the City of North Bay, and County of Frontenac. We also have Justin Jones, who's a community engagement planner with over 10 years of experience working with municipalities. This name may sound familiar, as he was part of the WSP team that helped create Grey County Cycling and Trails Master Plan last year. And lastly, we have Will Lamond, who's a planner who comes to WSP with previous experience working for the province. And with that brief introduction, I'll pass it off to Nadia from WSP to carry out details of the project.
Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you, Mr. Warren and members of council, and thank you, Stephanie. I should be able to share my screen. Share screen. So I have a very short presentation, although I could speak about age-friendly community planning for hours. So, but I promise that I will not speak for hours. So I have about a 10-minute presentation and happy to answer any questions. So I just wanted to confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if this is there. There we go. I'm here today on behalf of WSP. I am the project manager for this project. Sorry, there we go. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay. I just wanted to also just advise that in addition to Will and Justin, my colleagues, Anita will also be looking at the policies that are in various documents that we'll be reviewing and pulling out recommendations that relate to age-friendly communities. And also Christina Valente worked at on the active or the Cycling and Trails Master Plan for Grey County. So she will help on the transportation dimension. One of the things that I want to convey is that this project will be for all ages. It is for the youth, it is for families, it is for young adults, it is for older adults. And that is in line with the WHO, the World Health Organization, definition of age-friendly community. And the quote is here on the screen. An age-friendly community encourages active aging by optimizing opportunities for health, participation, and security in order to enhance quality of life as people age. And the flower here is the symbology, if you will, that the World Health Organization has created. And so the center, age-friendly city, age-friendly county, age-friendly community, and each petal represents what is called a community dimension. And so there are 8 community dimensions that we are going to be looking at to assess how is the county right now in each of these dimensions? What are the opportunities for improvements? And then the action plan and the strategy will take each petal, if you will, and expand upon it. One of the things that I want to mention is it's very interesting that the 8 dimensions, only 3 are what I call hard infrastructure. There are 5 dimensions that are on the soft infrastructure. And so I always say to communities and council, you can have the best parks plan, you can have the best housing, you can have the best transportation plans. But if you don't have people who are socially participating, who are employed in your communities, who know about events or these parks or information, you're only looking at one aspect. So the whole age-friendly community lens, in my professional opinion, is a very holistic lens that incorporates all facets of a community, your hard infrastructure and your soft infrastructure. So I'm really excited to explore those through our 8-month process. As I said, these are statistics that we received from Stephanie, which was based on the Hempson report published this year. So this is just a population pyramid of the age structure and the forecasted age structure till 2046. And, it's very similar to other communities, even though the population is getting wiser and older. But again, the age-friendly community concept is really for all ages. So these are just some statistics that we always like to sort of paint a high-level picture on. One of the things that I'm not sure if everyone is aware of, but the province did release a new guide, and I'm just going to hold up the cover in case you haven't seen it. So this is what it looks like. And so this has been an update to the guide the very first guide that I'm aware of came out in 2013. And this guide is really great. It reinforces the getting to outcomes process. And how do you get there? So the 4 phases that the provincial government outlines is, first of all, you need to define your local principles. So we're going to be defining a vision statement. We're going to be defining those key goals, and then we're going to assess the needs. So we're going to take each of those petals and look at what are the existing opportunities, what are things that are working well right now. And the World Health Organization actually has checklists for each of those dimensions that we're going to use, refine, and employ. So we're really going to dive deep into the county to see what's going well, where do we need improvements, and that's going to help inform the action plan. And then the key and the most important outcome is the implementation phase and the sustainability of that implementation phase. So this end product or strategy and action plan needs to be treated as a living document. It needs to be monitored on an annual basis, and we will include a framework that County Council can use to have those annual check-ins. And so we're really excited. I have to keep going because I know I'll be here for hours. But this is a four steps. And the reason why the province has the sustain with the arrow is to maintain it and keep it alive. And so we are going to be using this provincial framework to prepare this strategy and action plan. So phase 1 is the age-friendly community strategy, which is from May to September. So that's the defining the vision statement and the principles and assess the needs. So that's phase 1. Then in the fall in October, we're going to move into the develop the action plan and the implementation, which will be through to January with some leeway if we have to go into March. But we are actively getting started with our robust and comprehensive engagement process. So for phase 1, for the strategy component, we will have key representative interviews. We're going to have some focus groups. The county already has a project website, and we're going to host surveys. We're going to be using public input, which is an online engagement platform. So great opportunities to use that, different modes of participation that will be used throughout the process. We will also have 2 community visioning workshops in June. The dates yet have not been confirmed. We'll also be doing the background review to help inform those visioning workshops. And then we will actually have a community assessment, and my colleague Justin will be going out and visiting certain places throughout the county and really taking a photo inventory and a documentation, if you will, of basically it'll be the transportation, outdoor buildings and spaces, and the housing dimensions. We are in the midst of establishing a stakeholder committee, and those members hopefully will be stewards of the plan and will help to carry the plan into the implementation and post-plan completion. In phase 2, the engagement events will result in some discussion series. So we're going to host 3 discussion events to present the action plan and sort of have a touch point and say, this is what we've heard, this is what we've observed. Now let's dive deeper. And so, for example, let's say somebody through the first phase identifies, there's no connection between this neighborhood and that neighborhood, or we're not aware of something happening. Then we can actually use maps and get down into specifics so that we can have the detailed action plans. The implementation plan will also be used to identify short, medium, and long-term priorities. What are those timeframes? That will get developed through our consultation and program. And what's really key, the implementation plan doesn't rest solely on Grey County. The implementation plan is going to identify potential partnerships, potential leads on certain things. And so it really is a community effort. It really is a government effort. It really is an organizational effort. And so I really want to just make that comment that not everything is going to rest on the county. And that's why the Stakeholder Committee and the key interviews with other groups, we're going to be reaching out to the Indigenous communities as well to really help, what are those action items and who can take carriage of that, who can take a stewardship role and really help drive that action item through to implementation. And again, we will have a series of key performance indicators that are based on a number of publications that have been produced by World Health Organizations and other age-friendly communities that we've worked in to help provide those measurements or that report card to see how well the plan is being implemented. So as I mentioned, we will have a stakeholder committee, and that is being selected right now. We are proposing 6 meetings, both meetings, also workshop style, collaborative opportunities for input. And again, partner agencies and community groups will be participating through the visioning workshops, the interviews, focus groups, etc. And then the members of the public, of course, the public is really important to participate. This is your community. We're here to help facilitate that dialogue, that discussion, to bring best practices, to continue our research if there's new items that come forward that that we can help, dig deeper. So it really is a collaborative effort, and we're just here to help guide and facilitate the process. But the more involvement from the public, the more information and the great ideas that can come from that. We really want the community to be engaged, and in keeping with the age-friendly and engagement principles, we have a variety of tools that can help facilitate that engagement, because not everybody likes to speak, not everybody may have the opportunity to fill out a survey. So we've really designed a program that will be very interactive and cover various means of learning and providing input. And really the outcome is a strategy. That's the vision and the principles. And the action plan is the detailed items with the implementation framework. And it's going to reflect through the input of everyone, Grey County residents' needs and interests. What are the supports through the community partnerships, and how are we going to help with some of that implementation? And again, we're going to use best practices from the WHO, federal and provincial guidance, and really continue to strive to get to a plan that will work for Grey County. And so just in terms of high level next steps, we're going to be starting our background review. We're getting our stakeholder committee organized and formed. June, we'll have some community engagement and visioning. And then we'll start developing the strategy based on those sessions. We'll also have our community audit, which will probably happen in August, September. And even though we're in the pandemic, it's there's no interaction with people that we need to do. It's basically a visual site visit that will be conducted. And then through that, we'll be moving into the action plan and implementation plan in the fall. So this is just a high level diagram. And Stephanie is the contact at Grey County if there are any questions or comments about the project. On the county's project webpage, there is a link that people can register to receive information, and we will be populating that webpage over the coming weeks with more information. So thank you, Mr. Warden, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Ms. DeSanti. Appreciate that presentation. Council, are there any questions? I'm going to start with Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you very much, Ms. DeSanti, for your presentation. This is a really exciting project. My question is probably for CAO Wingrove, and I'm wondering, Kim, it just appears to me from the presentation that there may be some overlap with the community safety and well-being plan. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to how the two will interact and will work in tandem.
Thanks very much, Councillor Keaveney. And I know that Randy and Stephanie, as well as Barb Fady, who sits on the steering committee for community safety and well-being, are well aware of that potential. And I think it's important that we establish from the beginning some good communication channels between the two projects, that this project has the benefit of the work that's already been undertaken by the Community Safety and Wellbeing Project, and can really use that extensive consultation, et cetera, that's already happened to really kind of hit the ground running when it comes to certain aspects of this. So I think you're absolutely right that there are places where there's been excellent work already undertaken. There are other areas of this work planned that community safety and well-being has not yet touched. And so that needs to start. And hopefully what we end up with is two really strong plans and projects and a solid path forward. But I would suggest that with Frandy or Barb or Stephanie have any other comments, they could pitch them in.
Stephanie, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. We had actually flagged Sarah Cowley to be part of the Stakeholder Committee, who was pivotal in the creation of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And so our fingers are crossed that I know she's likely a very busy woman, but the intent there would be to make sure that her expertise and background information and knowledge of that plan could translate such that there are synergies versus duplication in efforts.
Barb Fady, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, I just wanted to mention that we've had a little time lapse because Sarah Cowley has moved on from her position. So while you were moving forward with this plan, we were doing recruitment, and I'm happy to say that we have a new coordinator. Her name is Tanya Roberts, and I'll be certain to link Tanya back through to Randy and Stephanie to ensure that there is continuity between the two plans.
Thank you very much. Councillor Robinson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and certainly I'm excited about this this program, and I'm just going to watch the development of it. I see a lot of potential for this strategy and the interconnection with a lot of the programs and services and future studies that Grey County will be doing. So very, very amped up about this, I must say. I'm wondering two things. I'm interested in a definition of an age-friendly community, and certainly have gone through the report, and I'm just trying to pull from that as well. But I'm wondering if that's something that could be addressed. And also, I'm wondering with regard to participation, would our long-term care communities also be involved? Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Warden, so I will, don't think I have the share screen capability any longer, but I will read it. It is on the presentation deck. So the World Health Organization defines age-friendly community as this. An age-friendly community encourages active aging by optimizing opportunities for health, participation, and security in order to enhance quality of life as people age. Now, when we undertake these plans for communities, we present that, but then we want the input. What does that mean to Grey County? And so when we start talking about developing vision statements, we do provide examples from other communities. You know, some people may not have had a lot of experience in developing vision statements. So we use that to sort of help get the juices flowing. We will have questions to help start that dialogue. And so that is the, you know, the international sort of definition. But from there, we create together the vision statement for Grey County, and it gets there's a check and balance. You know, we'll create it at the beginning, but as we go through the process and developing the action plan, we always go back to that. And okay, now that we've gone deeper, does that vision statement really represent the true intent and what we're seeking? And sometimes it changes. Sometimes it doesn't. So, so we do create that for Grey County. And on the long-term care homes, sorry, maybe Stephanie, you can advise. I don't have the stakeholder committee membership opportunities, sorry, spreadsheet in front of me. So maybe Stephanie, you can help answer that question, please.
Yes, for sure, Nadia. That's exactly where I was just going to chime in. So we have connected with Jennifer Cornell as well. She's appointed Terry Fisher, one of their staff members that works for long-term care. She's extremely enthused and excited to be part of the stakeholder committee. So yeah, we certainly have involvement and representation from that department of the county.
Thank you. Councillor Potter, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you to Stephanie and the delegation. You know, the default is almost to go to senior citizens, but we have, as the chart shows and the statistics shows, we have a much tougher time attracting young families and young people, and that is the future of Grey County, and that's the future of every one of our municipalities. If we don't start finding ways to bring those people and make them part of our communities, we will not have communities. So what worries me as much as anything is when we're talking about stakeholders, how do we represent the people who aren't even here yet that we are trying to bring? The young families looking for a place to locate, young entrepreneurs looking for a place to start a business, all those people that are out there and don't even think of Grey County. We aren't even on their radar, and we need to be on their radar, and we need to work a lot harder at it. So how are we going to do that? What stakeholder membership on a committee, for example, will we have that will help us to connect with those people?
So Stephanie, I see your hand up, but maybe Ms. DeSanti, do you have anything to say on that?
And I will, thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. So that is one of the key things about this strategy and action plan. This plan has to be a live document, and it will be through not just the stakeholder committee membership, but so I just want to speak to two things. Through our engagement program, we will have opportunities to reach out to young families and I'll get to the future residents and business owners for Grey County. One benefit of COVID is that we are no longer having, you know, the 2 4-hour meetings in the evening. We're having opportunities online for people to participate in various times of the day when it's convenient for them. And so in various projects, the online engagement through the pandemic has actually seen more participation and from a wider demographics than the standard evening meeting held at during a weeknight where families are busy with their kids at events. So I'm confident that we're going to outreach to and get that input from existing families and young adults. And we have Launchpad will be part of our stakeholder committee. And it's also about the messaging. In any project, why should a resident, why should a business owner, why should maybe a tourist be interested in participating in a plan? And so I'm a big proponent of clear communication, and with all my engagement training and practice, that is a very key piece, that nothing goes out until it is that I've reviewed, so that it is really getting to the key point of the project. In addition, yes, there's accessibility standards for not just buildings, but also information. But there's also information that I've learned through working with other communities on age-friendly community projects on communications and information. So for example, all caps and italics are not age-friendly fonts. How does something look on a page? What is the wording? And how often do people want to be reminded of an event? These are things that we learn from hearing from others. If we were doing events in person, some communities used to have, they would use the place of worship to post notifications of, hey, we're having this event. Some municipalities would would send with their tax bills like a little project information flyer, right? Like I love paper. I can't keep up with emails, right? So, but I'm a visual learner. And so there's a lot of different ways in which we can reach the broad population so that people are aware, and why is it important for them to participate? So that's all part of the communications and engagement component. And my last point is, when I was referring to the sustainability of this plan, or the keeping this plan alive, the committee members and other businesses will naturally want to help and attract those residents to the county, those businesses. And that's part of the annual check-in. That's part of that report card. And through those partnerships, that's where those people, that energy, they're stewards of the plan, have to continue forward and bring on people and empower people to want to make a difference in their community, and really ensure that the county attracts those young families and professionals and entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Stephanie, I think you wanted to add something to that, did you?
Yes, if I may, Mr.
Just before you do, I wonder, because it's on the same subject, and I know you're going to speak to the younger demographic, but I wonder if you might, in the course of addressing that, also address the chart, well, not chart, but diagram that we see in your report, which is the age-friendly process diagram, but right in the middle it has aging in place. So how do we address, what are the younger audience going to think when they see the process with the aging in place in the middle there?
So, Mr. Warden, we actually have created a Grey County age-friendly modified flower. So that is not yet out for the public, but it will be. And so while that's the World Health Organization sort of aging in place, what we do for the center of the flower is age-friendly community.
Okay.
So the concept is an age-friendly community, so that all of those dimensions, especially the soft ones, that there are opportunities for civic employment, there are opportunities for social participation, there are the social aspects to help with an age-friendly place. So again, a community needs people.
Understood. Our diagram will not have aging in place in the center. It'll have something else. Stephanie?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. Just to build on what Nadia had shared, some of the key representatives on the stakeholder committee would be including Launchpad, Georgian College representative. We also have reached out to CMHA, more specifically an individual that is connected to the program that's called YouthNet. So she's quite heavily connected to youth, as is today. And she said part of that program, she tends to typically ask, what can our communities do for you to youth as part of her outreach today? And so she's really excited to be able to share a lot of these ideas and inputs that have been shared. We've also are looking to connect with business enterprise center to catch that age group demographic that's looking to potentially move to the area or establish roots from a business perspective, as well as YMCA, recreational parks, facilities. So trying to really capture that broad net. And I entirely agree with your notion there around potentially being careful around using certain verbiage and terminology that could potentially lead people to think that this is a seniors or older adults only plan. Aging in place could potentially be that type of wording that would potentially misdirect individuals to participate. So that will definitely stay on our radar. I'd also like to highlight Facebook live chat as part of the consultation engagement that hopefully will connect to a broader audience as well. Just through that, I know we haven't potentially mentioned how council will be involved in this. I just wanted to flag that you guys are a key component to this project, and we didn't want to misstating that. And we definitely want to involve you in any way we can throughout all of the various engagement strategies being proposed. More specifically, we're hoping to carry out a focus group discussion with council, as well as local municipal staff. So I just wanted to flag that. We missed to notice that you guys are a key part of the decision making, and we would love to have your endorsement of this project going forward.
Very good. Councillor Desai, you're next, and then I'll be going to Councillor Potter. I'm hoping to wrap this up and put things back onto the agenda. Councillor Desai.
Thank you very much, Warden Higgs. That was an interesting question from Councillor Potter, and I do appreciate him bringing that up because we often do lose track of the younger constituents, if you will. One of the things that I find and I've found is that I just saw the comment from Councillor Mackie, sorry. One of the things that I do find is that it's a two-way street. There are shortcomings on the government side of getting youth involved, but there's also shortcomings on the other side of it, with youth not really taking initiative to come to government and say, hey, listen, we would like to be involved in this. And so I think I do hope that through this process, we're able to bridge that gap, if you will, because I think Councillor Potter is absolutely right. We tend to focus too much on the aging crowd, and we don't focus on the crowd that can provide the services that will be needed for the aging crowd. So I do appreciate him bringing that point up. Thank you very much, Warden Hicks, and thank you, Councillor Potter.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Potter.
Thank you. And actually, I was reassured by Stephanie's answer. I think she's on the right track. That we more directly involve younger people because so often they feel left out. And I know that in 20 minutes, some of the younger women, most of our downtown businesses in the Blue Mountains are owned by younger women, and they can network a lot faster in half an hour than I could in a year. They know where to find each other, and they know all the right places to go that it would take me forever. And I have a communications background, so I know quite a bit about it, but I wouldn't be able to get into the same business. So I'm happy to hear that we are working that way. I just am constantly reminding people that we connect as well through our communities of interest with people from Collingwood, including the Business Enterprise Center there. So, I hope that we will not let county lines get in the way of making sure that this project is a success. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potter. And with that said, I don't see any other hands. Ms. DeSanti, I want to thank you for that presentation and very good discussion. Will you be sticking around for the report, the staff report, which will be coming right after the consent agenda?
I can, if desired, yes.
Stephanie, was it your plan that Ms. DeSanti would be available for that section?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden, that would be great. I don't expect this report to take very long.
Yes, I think we've had a very good discussion already. Okay, with that said, then we're moving on to item number 4, which is looking at the consent agenda. And is there anything that needs to be pulled, council? I do not see any hands. And if that is the case, then I have the consent agenda being moved by Councillor Carleton and seconded by Councillor Woodbury. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you very much. We'll move to item number 6A. Let me get to that here, which is the Age-Friendly Community Strategy and Action Plan report. Stephanie, you're on deck. It's being moved by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor Keaveney. Stephanie?
Thank you, Mr. Warden and County Council. To be honest, I really don't have anything further additional to say with respect to this report specifically. I just really wanted to flag that we are aware and certainly want to include and involve council through this process and make sure that we are connecting with you specifically for engagement purposes and your input. We do see this project as being highly collaborative, and yeah, we're really looking forward to connecting through the various means that WSP has provided as options for engagement. As well, just flagging that this will be likely mostly virtual in nature because of COVID, but hopefully that won't be a significant barrier and potentially a benefit in some cases. So again, yeah, keeping it really short and brief. If there's anything further, any additional questions that you have for myself, Randy, Nadia, happy to address them at this time.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Council, you have the report before you. Is there any question that comes from that report that we haven't already discussed? Speak now or forever hold your peace. With that said, I'm going to call the question. Anne-Marie, I see you lining yourself up for the next item. Okay, I'm going to call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion before you to receive this report? I see no objections, so that is carried. Thank you very much, Ms. DeSanti. Thank you very much, Stephanie. This is exciting.
Nice to meet you all, and I look forward to engaging with you and seeing comments from you further on. So thanks very much. It's going to be, I'm excited to work on this, and 40 minutes for me to talk about age-friendly is a bit of a record. So thank you.
Good. We're glad you restrained yourself. All right, we are on to item, bye-bye now. We're on to item 6B, which is the divesting Grey County housing units. Anne-Marie Shaw is on deck. It is being moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Klumpus. Anne-Marie, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. As of December of 2017, we brought forward a report looking at selling some of our detached homes that we own in Owen Sound, referred to as our Westmount units, and they're on the 7th and 8th Avenue in Owen Sound. As they became vacant, we would look at using those funds to create more affordable and energy efficient housing. And we were doing this obviously at the natural turnover of the units. As we have such a low vacancy rate in the county and higher private market rents, we haven't had any come available until now. So I'm just bringing forward a process in which we would like to use in order to sell the units. Also, one of the scenarios that was not part of the report that was brought back in December of 2017 was sale to a current tenant. So we do currently have a tenant, have a family that is interested in purchasing the house that they are currently living in. So I am providing this report as just a guide as to how we're proposing to sell the units. So first, looking at the sale of a current unit, existing tenants would have the opportunity. That did go out to all of our Westmount tenants, and we do have one that is interested. With council's approval, obviously, the Grey County Housing would communicate with all of our tenants to see if there is anyone that might be interested in purchasing units as they become available. We would, once the properties are sold, we would notify any future opportunities to people that might be interested too. So we're looking at the possibility of a list of tenants that may be interested in purchasing our housing. We would also recommend that they go through the Grey County Home Ownership Program. This provides a 5% forgivable down payment loan. It is contingent on them applying and being successful in obtaining a mortgage. meeting the eligibility program requirements, and it does have a 20-year forgivable loan that is registered on title. So therefore that household, if they did sell the home, they would owe the loan back plus 5% of any capital gains, and that's just according to the program guidelines. So if there was no one that was interested in selling in purchasing the unit, then we would sell the unit on the open market. And we are going to prepare a tender to solicit real estate services for that process. The report also outlines the process that we currently use in order to any sale of a property, and we would follow that process when looking at whether it was a current tenant or an open market sale. And it also lists the properties. The report in 2017 did specify that we're only looking at selling 20 of those properties as they come up and as they come available. And we'll see how that goes, considering we've had 2 come available in 3 years. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Councillor Burley, I see your hand.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Just to clarify for me, please, you're only going to sell the units that are vacant?
That is correct. Only as they become vacant. We would not be selling any of the homes in which the families are currently living.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Milne, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Anne-Marie, for the report. So in terms of selling to an existing tenant who may want to purchase the building they're currently renting, the issue of being fair or giving fair opportunity to all of our tenants and indeed all of the residents of Grey County, because this is a public, publicly owned property. How do we get past that hurdle? I'm probably not describing it very well, but I'm sure you're aware of what the issue I'm trying to get at is.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you make that fair?
Yes. So that's why we're coming with this process. So what we're looking at is if there's everybody would have the opportunity in Grey County Housing that if they are interested in buying one of our family homes that come available, they would put themselves on a list and let us know. So we are looking at fair market value, and we are looking at attaching it to our home ownership program so that we can track. So if that person wants to sell it within next year, they're going to owe us the money back. So that would prevent any of that flipping or anything that might happen. I know that this has been done in other areas. The take up is relatively low, 1, 0, maybe 2 units that actually end up being sold this way, simply because a lot of the people that do live with us are unable to afford a mortgage. But if there are those that are, then I think that it is fair for us to provide that opportunity to them. And then, of course, it would go on open market. In open market, it can be just sold as a regular house that is for sale and would be sold through a real estate agent. So the other thing about it, too, is the program for the home ownership program is a first come, first serve program. So it's sort of, if we had 1 or 2 tenants that might be interested, it would be based on that first come, first serve. And that's the way that program works for anybody in Grey County to use. That meets the certain eligibility criteria of income and assets.
Go ahead, Councillor Milne.
But I'm talking about an existing tenant who wants to purchase the property they're currently renting.
Yes.
Will anyone else be able to bid on that unit, or is it strictly going to be offered to that interested individual?
It's strictly being offered to that individual.
So it's almost like a single source.
It is. And if you think about it, we have 40 units that are there right now. We are not going to turn over anybody else into those units. And this is the only family that is interested. So I think this will be a one-off.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackie, you're next.
Thanks, Warden. I do believe most of my questions were just answered by Councillor Milne's questions. Just one further, is there an appraised value on these units? Or you talked about fair market value, but is there an actual appraisal done to make sure that we are getting the most reasonable price?
Yes, so we did, when the tenant first came to us, we did have an appraisal that was done just by a third party independent appraisal. And as they become available, that would be what we would do. If we were going, we would get a third party to do it. If we were going to sell it through a real estate agent, then we would leave that up to the real estate agent too. So it is going to be a separate party other than the one that we provide the tender to, that's going to be the person doing the appraisal. But yes, it has been appraised. They gave us a range of what they thought the market value was at that time in the neighborhood. So that's what we would be basing this sale on.
Thank you for that. I do not see any other hands. Going once, twice, gone. All right, so it's time to call the question on receiving this report and the recommendations contained therein. Is there anyone opposed? I do not see any hands, so I will say that that too is carried. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. We're on to item 7 now, other business. Madam CAO, I believe that you wanted to address the item that was taken off the schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yes, Council, I wanted to speak with you this morning regarding the Old Durham Road Black Pioneer Cemetery located at Grey Road 14 and Old Durham Road. You were all in receipt of the letter objecting to our consideration of the adjacent property as the location for a new transportation depot. On behalf of all of the staff, I want to sincerely apologize to the cemetery committee, the community, and the descendants of those who are buried there for the concern and hurt that they are feeling. There should have been consultation with the cemetery committee at the beginning of the process to understand the history. I also want to apologize to all of you for failing to have anticipated these concerns. As staff, we were not aware of the significance of the site or the existence of the committee who cares for it, and we should have been. I've spoken with the chair of the cemetery committee, Professor Norquay, as I indicated to you earlier, and committed to setting up a meeting with the group to understand their perspective. Any of you would be most welcome to join in that conversation. I hope we can use newfound understanding to work together. Staff will bring back a report on the cemetery property and on patrol property to a future council meeting.
Thank you, Madam CAO. Deputy Warden McQueen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Madam CEO, for speaking to this. I had a conversation with Naomi this morning, and I want to pass on to you that she was so grateful for you and the warden for reaching out to her. So I want to pass that on to both of you for reaching out to her and speaking about this right away and quickly, and so she's quite grateful of that. Certainly moving forward, I had a good conversation with her this morning, and so they are having a meeting tonight, and I think there is, just from what I gathered, certainly a gathering of information. It certainly is a very significant site, even to a national level, and I think there's a lot of positiveness moving forward that we can all speak to and learn more. And certainly, if I can be of any assistance, I certainly will certainly offer that. And certainly, I had a really good conversation with her this morning, and certainly, I think there's a great opportunity here for us moving forward and understanding. And so I'll leave it at that. But she did want to pass on that she was quite grateful for both of you reaching out and having those conversations.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Anyone else? I don't see anyone. Is there any other business? And seeing none there.
Councillor McQueen.
Oh, Councillor McQueen, yeah.
Just to not to belabor that conversation around the preservation of old barns and that. But I was thinking since that this morning, going back to what Randy was saying, I know their request was with regards to surplus farm dwellings or surplus properties with regards to the preservation of old barns, but I just wonder if Randy is able to also look at the overall part of those heritage barns, just in a general aspect of moving forward, just in if there's any kind of preservation or ideas around that. I think it's good to have that thought, and if there's anything that can be brought forward, because I know specifically it was more specific around the surplus of farm dwellings and the purpose of keeping that barn with the surplus house. I'm not sure if everybody is quite aware of that provincial policy, but if a farmer is buying up multiple farms, they have that ability to, or there is that ability to surplus the farm house. And but I think as a bigger picture, I just wanted to throw that out, Mr. Warden, just in the sense of the overall part of barns and the landscape that we see through Grey County as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Just to be very clear, I do not have to make a notice of motion with regards to the automatic speed enforcement devices, correct?
So coming back, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, that was my interpretation of the conversation earlier, and I just wanted to make sure that I had the right interpretation, and that it was something that would come through staff activities. Thank you.
My understanding, Councillor Desai, is that it was going to be addressed as part of the report that we'll be dealing with in July, but perhaps just to clarify, we can have Mr. Hoy chime in. I don't see him on my screen.
Yeah,
No,
I'm here. Through
yeah.
you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, we'll include something in there about kind of our challenges and struggles and possibilities with the camera enforcement.
Okay, and Madam CAO.
Just to follow on with that, the positioning of cameras, et cetera, Pat may be able to touch on that in July. I think when it comes to the whole the court process and that was alluded to briefly, I think that might take a little bit longer to talk about how those tickets are processed and the costing, et cetera, who may need a little bit more time. So maybe there'll be a couple of go rounds at this, but the question's been asked and we'll make sure that over the coming months, we get you all the answers that you're looking for. Okay, thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Desai. I don't see any other hands. Is there any other business?
Councillor Millen.
Oh, there is other.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Madam Clerk. I just can't avoid the opportunity to say that if we'd had a serious discussion about road rationalization, we probably might have avoided a lot of these issues. That's all. Thank you.
Point made. And Councillor Body is chuckling, his shoulders are going up and down. All right. So I think that's it for other business, is it? Yes. And with that said, are there any notices of motion? I don't see any. And that brings us then to one final motion before us. Item number 9.
Sorry, Mr. Warden. Councillor Desai has his hand up still. So I just I wanted to make sure we didn't miss.
I think his hand is still there from the previous.
Yeah, I forgot to take it down.
All right.
Sorry.
No.
Okay, we're on to a motion for adjournment. It's been moved by Councillor O'Leary and seconded by Councillor Woodbury that we adjourn. I'm gathering that no one will be opposed to that.
I thought the final motion was going to be an endorsement of the Toronto Maple Leafs to win the game tonight.
That too, yes. We wish.
Can I call a recorded vote on that motion?
Your vote is not relevant here, Mr. Desai.
Okay.
As a diehard Montreal fan, I hope.
Thank you, everyone. Scott, were you just waving goodbye, or were you trying to say something? I think he was just waving goodbye.
Madam Clerk wants to hit that red button pretty bad, I think.
Thank you, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.